You're watching A News. I'm Bakhtiar Sanowan. Let's go through the main headlines. Over 500 are dead and nearly 1,000 remain missing after the devastating flash floods that have hit Nepal and Tibet. Iran says it's preparing conditions to reopen the Strait of Hormuz as the conflict reaches the 6-month mark. And protesters in Pakistan call for answers after the fatal hospital fire that killed 14 newborn babies. We begin in Asia, where the death toll from the devastating flash floods in Nepal has risen to 547. Close to 1,000 people are still missing in Nepal and neighboring Tibet, with an international search and rescue effort underway.
Rescue teams are using heavy machinery, helicopters and search dogs to recover bodies and look for survivors after a massive surge of water, ice, mud and debris swept through Himalayan river valleys. Authorities are now warning of a possible second disaster, as debris blocking the Botakoshi River has created a lake that is continuing to rise. China says millions of cubic meters of water could flow into the area in the coming days, raising concerns over further flooding. The disaster destroyed roads, bridges and power facilities along a key route connecting Kathmandu with Lhasa in Tibet. At least 540 missing people are foreign nationals, including tourists and pilgrims. Japan says 5 of its citizens believed to be on a tour in Nepal are missing.
The Japanese government will continue to make every effort to ensure the safety of Japanese nationals.
Australia says the number of missing Australians has risen to 39 and has announced $3.6 million in aid for affected communities.
We've got about 20 people now deployed or who are employed by Australia in Nepal. We are adding to that. We will build on those resources over the next days as we are able and depending on the need.
International rescue and relief efforts are continuing as authorities race against time to find those still missing and prevent further damage.
Among those still unaccounted for in Nepal's deadly flash floods are hundreds of foreign nationals, most of them tourists. Families both in Nepal and abroad continue to wait for news of their loved ones.
A new threat is complicating rescue efforts along the Nepal-China border. A landslide has created a lake that is now overflowing, forcing rescue teams to temporarily suspend operations in some areas. Residents in Nepal's Nuwakot district have been evacuating to higher ground in Trishuli amid fears that river levels could rise further. The disaster has killed hundreds of people across Nepal and Tibet, with more than 1,000 people still missing across Nepal and Tibet. Among those unaccounted for are foreign nationals, including tourists and pilgrims from the United States, India, Australia, the UK and other countries. At emergency centres, families are checking lists of those rescued and missing, hoping for news of their loved ones. In Nuwakot, one relative described the anguish of not knowing what happened to his brother.
My brother should be rescued. I don't know how and where he is. He has been missing for 3 days.
The disaster has also triggered an international search for missing travellers. Among them is Srinivas Sudhir Rangu, an Indian-born US resident who was trekking towards Tibet's Mount Kailash with 9 friends when the flood struck. His wife, Sneha Sudhir, says the group has been out of contact since the disaster.
It's more than stressing out. It's devastating, right? So because first thing, I am not sure what my family is going through right there. And I have lost contact, or we have lost contact for last 48 hours. Emotionally taking us a toll on. We are here and we are looking for authorities to help, but we have got no one who's coming forward to help us give information.
Sudhir says the families of the missing men are supporting one another and trying to obtain information from authorities in Nepal, India and the United States. Her home has become a coordination point, with family members and friends helping manage calls and messages as they wait for updates. Rescue teams continue searching in difficult conditions, but the overflowing landslide lake and the risk of further flooding are making the operation even more dangerous.
One of North America's Great Lakes has become the latest flashpoint in the ongoing trade dispute between the United States and Canada. The decision by the White House to rename Lake Ontario comes after Washington imposed 50% tariffs on some of Canada's most important exports last week.
US President Donald Trump has signed an executive order seeking to rename Lake Ontario as Lake America. A White House aide said the order directs the US Department of the Interior and Secretary Doug Burgum to carry out the change, with the new name taking effect immediately on the US side.
And finally, I guess the purpose of this more than anything else is we're going to be changing the name of Lake Ontario, effective immediately, to Lake America. That's going to take place right now as I sign the order.
Lake Ontario is one of North America's 5 Great Lakes. It sits between the Canadian province of Ontario and the US state of New York. For Canada, the message from Ottawa is clear. The lake will remain Lake Ontario. In a post on X, Prime Minister Mark Carney said the name is more than 400 years old. He said it predates both the creation of Canada and the United States.
It's ridiculous. I'm behind Carney all the way, and I'm from Alberta, and so I'm kind of embarrassed to say I'm from Alberta because our premier isn't on Team Canada 100%, but as individuals in Alberta, there are lots of us who are on Team Canada with Carney to stand up to Trump in any possible way, and there is no way that that is Lake America. It's Lake Ontario.
It should be left as it was originally. There's no reason just bullying. America think that they can just bully the world at the moment, and it's not on. It all stems from these trade negotiations, and Canada has got the upper hand all the time.
The dispute comes at a sensitive time for US-Canada relations. Trade talks between the two countries broke down last week after 3 days of intensive negotiations. Washington and Ottawa have each blamed the other for the collapse.
Meanwhile, President Donald Trump says he believes Russia's President Putin is not planning an attack on NATO territory. Donald Trump's claims come despite U.S. intelligence reports which suggest Vladimir Putin may be preparing to authorize sabotage or other activities in Europe to test NATO's unity and support for Ukraine.
Good talks with him. He's not going to be attacking a NATO territory. So far, I think Russia's behaved quite well having to do with the Strait of Hormuz. And you have to understand, for everything they do, we do also.
So how serious is the threat to NATO if Russia does decide to test the alliance? Joining us from London is Cormac Smith, a former British diplomat. Mr. Smith, thank you for making time to join us on the program.
Welcome, and thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you. So, Mr. Smith, how significant is Donald Trump's statement that Vladimir Putin will not attack NATO territory, especially given the reports surrounding Ratcliffe's Moscow visit?
I'm not sure that it's as significant as some people are reading into it. I know there has been a lot of noise coming out of the Baltic states, in particular, of the threat of Russia attacking NATO territory. I personally, my assessment is that that is not likely to happen. Donald Trump does not want that to happen because there is also doubt in Europe if America would actually back the rest of Europe by triggering Article 5. Now, I think the truth is that within the Trump administration, there are a lot of pro-Ukraine hawks, and there are certainly a lot of pro-Ukraine hawks within the GOP, Trump's party. And with just over 60 days out from the midterm elections, the last thing that Donald Trump wants is to have to make a decision on whether to trigger Article 5 or not. So Donald Trump does not want Putin to invade NATO territory at the moment. However, I don't think a kinetic attack on NATO territory from Russia is likely, to be honest. What is far more likely and what is happening all the time is a hybrid attack. And for example, in the UK, only a year ago, we had an arson attack on the home of our Prime Minister in the centre of London. Those of us who knew immediately saw Russia's fingerprints all over that. The truth of that came out in the court case very, very recently, a year after it happened. So the big threat that we face in Europe at the moment is hybrid warfare and hybrid attacks from assassinations to cyber attacks to all sorts of different things that we have seen, including the attack on the Prime Minister's home in London last year. But this gives Russia plausible deniability. So it's always going to be below the threshold of triggering Article 5. Putin knows that if Article 5 was triggered, he would absolutely lose. So I think there's a lot of speculation about whether Russia did. In the view of this analyst, I do not believe that Russia is anywhere near a kinetic attack on NATO territory.
Mr. Smith, the Baltic states are often mentioned as a potential pressure point. Why would Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania be particularly sensitive in a Russian-NATO confrontation?
Why would they be sensitive? Well, they obviously, the Baltic states have real history of living under Russia's boot. They are three exceptionally well organized but very, very small states, about 2 million in each of them, not much more than 6 million between the three. Of course, they are also NATO members. Now, when I first went out to Lithuania, I went out in 2015 for to give a speech at a conference, and I found out that there was a lot of worry in the Baltics that after the illegal annexation of Crimea that they might be next. And also what I picked up at that time was a lack of faith in the Baltics that the rest of NATO would actually stand by them by triggering Article 5. So I think that fear from the Baltics is very, very real. They have the question of whether, even though they are in NATO, and remember the reason they joined NATO in the first place was for protection from Russia, the same reason that Sweden and Finland, the last two countries to join NATO, joined 2 years ago. And remember, Finland has a 1,340 kilometer border with Russia. So you've got to understand with the Baltics that Russia is a very bad neighbor to have, and they are right up against Russia. And yes, they will say that a kinetic attack is quite likely. I don't think it is, and that's just my assessment. It's the assessment of some people that I talk to, and I think maybe what you have from the Baltics is they are trying to motivate the rest of NATO behind them to make the necessary preparations. But there's already, and if I get my figures right, I think there's some 25,000 NATO troops in a forward deployment already and posted across the three Baltic states. So I don't think it's going to happen. But what will continue happening is hybrid attacks. And what we must do in all of Europe is we must become far less tolerant of those, and we must increasingly call them out for what they are, because hybrid warfare is just warfare by a different name. Russia is at war with Europe. Russia knows it. They have been since at least 2014. It seems that our leaders in Europe are waking up a little bit too late to that fact, the fact that we are also at war with Russia.
In your view, could Moscow use a false flag operation such as a drone attack attributed to Ukraine to create confusion and test NATO's response?
Absolutely, they could. This is absolutely in the Moscow playbook. They have tried it several times before, where it has been foiled and their plans have been uncovered. I think I think now, because, you know, I've been studying Russian hybrid warfare for 10 years, since before I first went out to Ukraine to work as a special communication advisor to the Ukraine's foreign minister between 2016 and 2018. So obviously with that title and that position, I've had to understand hybrid warfare, and I've been very, very involved in the media over the last 4.5 years since this horrible further invasion. Our leaders are I've said it already, in the West, are waking up slowly to the nature of Russian hybrid warfare. I was at a security conference in 2017 in Canada with the Ukraine's foreign minister, and people at the time were talking about Cold War 2.0. And Pavlo Klimkin got up and he told the world's media who were there in the conference, he said, we are not in Cold War 2.0, we are in a hot war. You know, the Ukrainians, you know, we need to see the world more, and Russia more, through the eyes of the Ukrainians. Our leaders in the West, I'm afraid to say, have been very, very slow to wake up. There are signs that we are waking up now, but, you know, they need to study it. They need to understand Russian hybrid tactics, and we need to have absolutely zero tolerance for anything that Russia does, and we need to call it. We need to call it out and respond to it as an act of aggression against our states. Because otherwise, if we don't do that, it encourages Russia, because Russia is a bully who understands and respects only strength and power. That has been something that diplomats who have dealt with Russia have known for many, many decades.
Mr. Smith, how much does the ongoing war in Ukraine affect Russia's ability and willingness to open a confrontation with NATO? And also, there are concerns about the United States military resources and strategic attention being stretched by the war with Iran. Could Moscow see this as an opportunity?
I think Moscow could see it as an opportunity. Look, I think Vladimir Putin is about to make a very big roll of the dice. He is having fake elections in September, just a few days away. And I say fake elections because we all know what the outcome will be. Russia is not a democracy in any form. After those elections, he is expected to go forward with another mobilization of estimates I've heard anywhere between 300 and 500,000 troops, most likely for a final throw of the dice into the Donbass in particular, and into Donetsk against the fortress belt, which he has been trying to capture not since 2022, but since 2014, when this war actually started. And that fortress belt, you know, is the gateway to Kyiv and the rest of Ukraine. And it's why the Ukrainians simply won't give it up without a very, very hard fight. So this is a gamble. I don't see him making a kinetic attack on NATO soil, because that is going to risk bringing the wrath of the might of NATO down on him, which clearly he cannot win against. But the mobilization is a very big gamble, because will he actually finally mobilize the sons of the wealthy middle classes in Moscow and St. Petersburg? He will probably try to avoid that. But what has happened this year for the first time with Ukraine's long-range strikes is the war has been brought home to the ordinary Russian people, the majority of whom were insulated from the war for the best part of 4 years. So I think, to answer your question, I think Putin is about to take a very big gamble. The visit of the director of the CIA earlier this week, the consensus is it was to give a very severe warning to Putin of certain things that he should not do, and in particular, he should not attack NATO countries. We don't know what was said. I would certainly hope that the warning included backing off on the regular hybrid attacks that he is making as well. But nevertheless, Putin is a cornered rat at the moment. This war is going very badly for him. He's losing between 1,000 and 1,500 men every day. And also the Russian economy is almost stagnating. His oil exports have fallen by some 50%, and he has now been forced to import oil from Belarus. You'll correct me if I'm wrong, Kazakhstan, I think, but certainly India as well. And forgive me if I've got Kazakhstan wrong, but certainly he is importing oil from Belarus and from India now, which is very, very significant. So there's a great toll being taken on the Russian economy, and of course, over 40% of the Russian government's budget is now devoted to the war effort. So what happens if there is not a war? It would suggest that in some ways, to survive, Vladimir Putin needs a forever war.
Cormac Smith, former British diplomat, joining us from London. Thank you very much for your time and for sharing your analysis with us. It was a pleasure having you on A News. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
One person has been killed and 2 others injured in Russian strikes on Ukraine's Kiev Oblast. Homes and commercial premises came under fires in the attacks on the Bucha and Fastiv districts. According to the regional military administration, 14 warehouses and 16 private residential buildings were damaged. Ukraine's State Emergency Service and said Russian forces had carried out 38 strikes on Kiev Oblast since Thursday. A Russian attack also injured 4 people in Ukraine's Zaporizhia after a drone struck a home improvement superstore on Friday. Authorities urged people to remain in shelters and stay away from strike sites. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has met with Moldovan President Maia Sandu. He was in Chisinau just as Moldova was marked its 35th Independence Day from Soviet rule, just days after Ukraine did the same. Sandu said Russian drones violated Moldovan airspace 5 times overnight during a major attack on Ukraine. One drone was later found on Moldovan territory. The 2 leaders discussed closer cooperation on security, energy and infrastructure. Zelensky voiced support for Moldova's EU membership bid, saying he hopes the 2 countries would eventually join the bloc together.
And we support your way to EU, and I'm sure that it will be one day. I wish you not to wait too much, as I hope that we will be in the EU together.
After the break, Iran says it's preparing conditions to reopen the Strait of Hormuz as the conflict reaches the 6-month mark. We are back on A News with more stories as the Israel-US war against Iran reaches 6 months. Mediators from 3 regional countries visited Tehran in the past week. A News correspondent Turaj Shiralilo reports on the latest.
The Israeli-US war against Iran, which broke out on 28th of February, entered its 7th month on Friday, while the capital Tehran hosted high-ranking officials from the regional countries, Pakistan, Oman and Qatar, to negotiate a way out of the current stalemate. Following the expiry of the fragile ceasefire deal between Tehran and Washington and stalled peace talks, renewed mediation efforts hit a fresh impasse with the announcement of stricter U.S. economic sanctions on Iran last week. Pakistani Army Chief and top negotiator in the indirect Iran-U.S. talks, Field Marshal Asim Munir, was the first dignitary to visit Tehran on Monday in a bid to revitalize the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding signed by Iranian and U.S. presidents in June. He was followed by Omani Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi, who visited Iran's capital on Tuesday with an agenda to negotiate a bilateral agreement with the Islamic Republic about maritime traffic at the Strait of Hormuz. As the 2 littoral states at the strategic waterway linking the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, their top diplomats issued a joint statement saying Tehran and Muscat agreed on a provisional corridor at the narrow waterway and demining the strait. Tehran also hosted the Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Mohammad Al Thani on Thursday, who, according to unconfirmed news reports, was carrying a message from the US side for Iranian officials. Besides Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, the visiting Pakistani, Omani and Qatari officials met Iranian President, Parliament Speaker and key negotiator and Secretary of Supreme National Security Council and former Revolutionary Guards commander. Turashir Alilu from Tehran, Foreign News.
When the United States and Israel launched the war on Iran in late February, President Donald Trump initially predicted it would last 4 to 5 weeks. 6 months later, the war is still going, with no clear end in sight. Here is more.
On February 28th, the United States and Israel launched a massive joint military operation against Iran. At the time, U.S. President Donald Trump said it would probably last 4 to 5 weeks. 6 months later, much has happened, and neither side has achieved a clear victory or brought the war to an end. But there have been major consequences. The war has shaken the global economy. It has caused major disruptions to global energy markets. Today, oil prices remain high, inflation has surged, and economic growth has slowed. There has been damage to both countries' militaries. Iran's military infrastructure has been severely degraded, including its air defenses, missile sites, and leadership. Many of Iran's top security officials and clerical leaders died in the initial wave of strikes. The country's national figurehead and religious leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was also killed. The U.S. military has also suffered losses in terms of drones and aircraft, whether to Iranian fire or with accidents. An estimate by the Center for Strategic and International Studies said that by July, the U.S. had used up about 2/3 of its Patriot interceptors. The war has also touched people's lives on both sides. Americans are weighing the economic costs and the prospect of a prolonged conflict that many didn't want in the first place.
Clearly it's not working. It's costing all the people of the United States lots of money. It's not getting any results that are good for our country. And clearly it's basically just an ego trip, but you know, we're pretty used to that now.
The same pressure is being felt in Iran. Shopkeepers say expanded U.S. sanctions are worsening their economic hardship, and not enough is being done to support everyday people.
In the way that we are under pressure, we are 100% distressed. The youth have many grievances against the officials who, really, in my opinion, they are traitors. Why? Because they truly do not attend to the people suffering. To me, being a responsible official means that the person should not rest. They should have iron shoes on their feet and be in the middle of the field alongside the people.
6 months into a war that was expected to last weeks, the fighting continues, costs are rising, and nobody knows when it will come to an end.
Turkey has dramatically increased diesel imports from the United States and India as disruptions to traditional supply routes force buyers to look further afield. Shipments from both countries have reached record levels this month, while Ankara's reliance on Russian diesel has fallen significantly. Adam Moore reports from Istanbul.
Turkey is diversifying its diesel supplies as Russian export restrictions and disruptions caused by the U.S.-Iran conflict reshape regional energy flows. Data from commodities firm Kepler shows that Turkey imported more than 120,000 barrels per day of Indian diesel in August. Imports from the United States, meanwhile, reached around 90,000 barrels per day. These are the highest monthly volumes from both countries in Kepler data going back to 2017. Energy Aspects, a market data provider, estimates somewhat lower volumes, but also points to a sharp increase in shipments from both countries. The shift comes as Turkey receives significantly less diesel from Russia, which has long been its main supplier. Russia recently banned diesel exports until at least the end of August after Ukrainian strikes on its oil refineries disrupted domestic supplies. Meanwhile, war damage to Middle Eastern refineries and reduced shipping through the Strait of Hormuz have further constrained regional supplies, forcing Turkish importers to seek alternative sources. Kepler estimates that Russian diesel shipments to Turkey fell to around 80,000 barrels per day in August, down from more than 200,000 barrels per day during the earlier months of this year. Russia's share of Turkey's total diesel imports has consequently dropped to roughly 20%, marking a significant change. In 2025, Russia supplied around 85% of Turkey's imported diesel, according to the country's energy regulator. And the supply diversification may be set to continue into the short term. According to industry sources, Moscow may extend its diesel export ban into September, potentially keeping Turkey reliant on alternative suppliers like the US and India even longer. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
At least 12 people have been killed in wildfires in Algeria. The country is grappling with the aftermath of an intense heat wave that has led to tinder-dry conditions. Communities through northeastern parts of Algeria are assessing the damage left behind.
In Algeria, where wildfires have killed at least 12 people, firefighters continue to tackle blazes across several provinces amid a severe heat wave. Residents in the village of Anchid in Jijel province inspected the damage on Thursday, a day after the fires swept through the region. Algeria's Interior Ministry says 5 people were killed in Jijel, 4 in Bajaya, and 3 in Tizi Ouzou, while 54 others suffered burn injuries, including 6 in critical condition.
These wildfires have impacted all of us this year. We have not witnessed this in our entire life, never known in the history of this mountain. The fire has left neither the dry nor the green.
The fires came from the mountain in the Tagrast region at night, and in moments it spread everywhere with smoke. The person who was driving this vehicle was surprised by the fires, so he left it and ran away to save himself. We left our homes and ran away to town of Borj Tahar. We are sleeping out in the open. The fires destroyed everything.
Residents described the devastation caused by the wildfires, saying they have lost their homes and property as the flames swept through their communities. Algeria's Civil Protection Services recorded 154 wildfires across the country on Wednesday. Bajaya alone saw 36 fires, with 18 brought under control. The fires come as an intense heat wave continues to affect North Africa, particularly Algeria and neighboring Tunisia.
After the break, protesters in Pakistan call for answers after the fatal hospital fire that killed 14 newborn babies. Stay with us. We are back on A News with more stories. A candlelight vigil has been held in Islamabad for the newborns killed in a hospital fire. The gathering has brought grief and demands for accountability as questions remain over how the tragedy occurred.
More than a dozen people held a candlelight vigil outside the nursery ward in Islamabad on Thursday, mourning 14 newborns killed in a hospital fire. The protesters called for accountability and demanded answers over the deaths.
I'm here to show my solidarity with the parents who got these children after prayers, after waiting, the mothers who had to go through C-section to have these children, and they lost them without even holding them in their own hands and without kissing their faces. And what do they get? Charred bodies of those little babies. I'm here in solidarity with those parents.
Our gathering here also serves to voice specific demands. A primary demand is for accountability regarding this entire situation, specifically how things reached this point.
The fire broke out at the Pakistan Institute of Medical Sciences on Wednesday. Only one of the 15 babies in the nursery survived.
Afghan officials say work on the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India gas pipeline in western Herat province could be completed within the next 2 months. The long-delayed project is intended to carry Turkmen natural gas through Afghanistan to Pakistan and India. Our correspondent in Kabul has the details.
Authorities in Herat say the remaining work on the section of the Tapi gas pipeline is nearing completion, raising hopes that gas could soon begin flowing into western Afghanistan. Herat Governor Islamjar says Turkmenistan's representatives have completed their work on the Herat section and will hand it over to provincial authorities once the work is finished. Speaking at the inauguration of the administrative building of the Herat Chamber of Industries and Mines, the governor urged factory owners and local residents to prepare for the use of Tapi gas. The idea for a trans-Afghanistan gas pipeline was first conceptualized in the 1990s to export Turkmen gas to South Asia through Afghanistan. The project later gained Asian Development Bank support, with India joining in 2008. Tapi is one of the region's biggest energy projects. The planned pipeline is around 1,800 kilometers long and is designed to transport up to 33 billion cubic meters of natural gas every year from Turkmenistan through Afghanistan to Pakistan and India. For Afghanistan, this project is also seen as an important economic opportunity, potentially generating jobs, supporting industry, and strengthening the country's role as an energy transit corridor between Central and South Asia. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, iNews.
So what could Tapi gas pipeline mean for Afghanistan and the wider region? Joining us to discuss the progress and regional significance of the project is Umir Anas, who is assistant professor from Ankara Yildirim Beyazit University. Mr. Anas, welcome to the program and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Mr. Anas, we have seen rapid progress in recent months with more than 120 kilometers of the 153-kilometer Serhedabad-Herat section reportedly laid. What does this tell us about the project's current momentum?
Well, Tapi pipeline has been installed for primarily a difference of opinion between India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, and also the Afghanistan conflict, especially the civil war situation and the conflict between Taliban and the then Hamid Karzai government. And that is why India was not much interested. Even Pakistan had difference of opinion. And now with Taliban as ruling Afghanistan, they have control over the situation, and the discussion between Afghanistan and Turkmenistan have gone very well, and they have been talking to each other, and finally they have restarted the construction of the pipeline, and they have also decided to start it as soon as possible. For Afghanistan, this project is going to be extremely important because the Taliban have the top priority to improve its economy. And the gas pipeline is going to be, in my opinion, is a lifeline for Afghanistan's economy because Afghanistan has a huge demand for gas, and Turkmenistan pipeline, this Tapi, is going to be providing that thing. Now, the second phase is that whether Afghanistan can convince Pakistan and then India to take this pipe to their countries as well. And in return, this pipeline will also be a source of revenue for Afghanistan. So that part is not going to be solved immediately, but I think that Pakistani authorities have shown interest in joining the pipeline and to start on their side. But as the construction work has already been completed in Turkmenistan side, and the Taliban have promised that within 2 months they are going to complete the construction on their side. So it means that the Pakistan side may be inclined to join the pipeline soon. It is very big and very significant development in this regard and for the region.
Mr. Anas, could access to natural gas reduce Afghanistan's dependence on imported electricity and other energy sources?
Of course, indeed, because Afghanistan's economy needs not just electricity, also gas for home use. So Afghanistan has been living in poverty, in extreme poverty in many of the areas, and the gas has not been transported to these regions. So gas pipeline is going to create a kind of a revolution in Afghanistan's economy. So for the Taliban, it is going to be the most promising economic step which they have taken in the last 5 years so far. So for Afghanistan, it is extremely important, and it is going to change the character of Afghanistan economy. As I said, that the next part, the TAPI, constitutes with Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. The next stage of Taliban's diplomacy will be to speak with Pakistan and India to get connected with this pipeline, so that this pipeline could also become connected with them. For Afghanistan, for sure, it is going to revive local economy. It is going to revive economic activities, business, and investment in the country, and going to create stability and stable economic conditions for the new investors. So this pipeline and the relation between Turkmenistan and Afghanistan, because of this pipeline, are also going to be strengthened. Even, for example, Tajikistan has shown interest to join the pipeline, and for this, with this development, Afghanistan is going to be more attractive for regional and international investment. So I think that Afghanistan government, led by the Taliban, has become very serious in starting and reviving the pipeline.
Security has historically been one of the biggest obstacles to TAPI project. How confident can we be that the pipeline can be protected along its Afghan route?
Yeah, you are right. Because for the last 10-15 years, Afghanistan, the pipeline was seen as a very difficult project, almost unviable project because of security situation. Especially India and Pakistan were not that much encouraged to join the pipeline. But now the Taliban have control on Afghanistan. And according to their assessment, they have taken full control of security situation in all distant districts, Herat and Kabul and North and South. Everything is under control of the Taliban, the new government. And also they have taken steps to reconcile with local groups, and they have controlled the criminal activities as well. So I think that security is on the Taliban's side. So now the security situation will not be that much a big issue, not just for investors, but also for Afghanistan and for other international players, including India and Pakistan. So I think that stability which is coming in Afghanistan is going to support this project. And that is where the Taliban a lot of challenges, and they have shown so much seriousness in controlling the security situation, so that the economic activity and economic normalcy and growth comes back to Afghanistan. So I think that security is going to remain an important challenge, but the Taliban have full commitment for this.
Mr. Anas, Pakistan and India are major intended consumers. Given their political tensions, how secure is the long-term demand for TAPI gas?
For India, the issues of transit and pricing issues are also one of the which they have to talk with the Taliban. And for Pakistan, these were not that much issues, but given the current situation and relation between Afghanistan and Pakistan, there is a lack of trust between the two countries. However, Pakistan has been making some statements in support of this pipeline, and they might be interested in future once the diplomatic normalcy comes back between Afghanistan and Pakistan. So Pakistan might be the first to come in favor of the pipeline and join it. However, for India, I will be careful as India may not have immediate or urgent need to join the project, because many things depend between about India and Pakistan relations. So far, relations between India and Pakistan have been really in their worst situation. So I do any immediate possibility of India joining the pipeline. However, in coming years, as Afghanistan and India relations are also going to improve, Afghanistan might talk to India, might speak to Indian authorities to convince them, because this is going to be an important thing for Afghanistan economy as well. So I will not rule out completely the possibility of India joining the pipeline. However, it is going to take a long time because India has been a principal participant of the pipeline. So India will join in coming years, or maybe in a decade. However, Pakistan might be joining sooner than India.
Umair Anas, thank you very much for joining us on A News and for sharing your insights on the TAPI project and its wider regional implications. We appreciate your time and insights. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Kazakhstan is entering a new phase of a major political overhaul, with the government stepping down and the country's newly elected parliament begins its work. The changes follow the introduction of a new constitution, which has reshaped both the legislature and the process of forming the government. Our correspondent Fariza Kalimurzina has more.
Kazakhstan's government has formally stepped down before the newly elected Kurultai as the country begins implementing major changes under its new constitution. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev has signed a decree confirming the government's resignation. The move is part of a planned constitutional procedure following the formation of the country's new legislature. But Kazakhstan will not be left without a functioning government. Prime Minister Uljas Bektenov, his deputies and the current ministers will continue serving in an acting capacity until a new cabinet is formed. Some of them could also be reappointed. The resignation comes as that new legislature begins its work in Astana. President Tokayev has opened the first session of the Kurultai, Kazakhstan's new 145-seat single-chamber parliament, which replaces the former two-chamber system of the Majlis and the Senate. The first elections to the Kurultai were held on August the 23rd, with 5 political parties securing seats. Opening its first session, Tokayev said the new parliament marks the beginning of a new stage in Kazakhstan's political system. And this is more than simply change in the structure of parliament. The Kurultai has been given broader powers and a greater role in shaping both the executive and the judicial system. Lawmakers can hold a vote of no confidence in their government and propose the dismissal of individual ministers. The Kurultai will also have a role in appointments to several key state institutions, including the Constitutional Court and the Central Election Commission. President Tokayev has nominated Aybek Dadibay to become the Kurultai's first speaker. Dadibay previously served as head of Kazakhstan's presidential administration and has led the Adilet political party since May. And once the Kurultai structure is fully in place, attention will turn to the formation of the new government. Tokayev says he will submit his nominees for vice president and prime minister to lawmakers before appointing the new cabinet following consultations with parliament. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Tbilisi's skyline is losing one of its most talked about landmarks. The city's striking Reich Tubes complex, a symbol of the country's post-Soviet architectural ambitions, is now being turned down. It sparked a clash between officials, architects and residents over how Georgia treats its recent past. Nini Nikolashvili has a story from Tbilisi.
Demolition crews are dismantling Tbilisi's Reich Park Music Theater and Exhibition Hall, the tubular structure locals call the Reich Tubes, after City Hall approved the teardown in June. Work began in late July and is set to wrap by December of 2025. Built between 2011 and 2012 under former President Mikhail Saakashvili's government, the building was meant to host concerts and exhibitions but was never finished after Georgian Dream took power in 2012, leaving it unused for over a decade. Prime Minister Irakli Tabakita has defended the decision, saying that this ugliness does not befit our beautiful capital. But the building's designers, Italian architects Massimiliano and Doriana Fuxas, say they were never even warned that demolition was coming. Massimiliano insists you cannot cancel buildings, you cannot cancel memories. Even among local people who never liked the design, some nevertheless objected to its destruction.
Personally, I don't like the way it looks visually, but I think that at this point, the state's priority should be construction, not destruction. There are many other things to do, and I don't think it's worth wasting money or energy on destroying this. There are many other things to do, even free school meals, which people have been talking about for a long time. People don't have medicine. There are basic things that need to be done, and in my opinion, now is not the time for destruction.
It was a symbol of Tbilisi. All the tourists, like the bridge, considered it a wonderful symbol. They took great photos of this landmark, and it was one of the symbols of the city. And now they're going to build something else, and it breaks my heart.
The site's owner, Reich Dom, plans to build a hotel in its place, part of a broader real estate deal requiring at least 44 million lari in investment by 2030. Critics argue the demolition is less about aesthetics and more about erasing a symbol tied to the previous government. Ugly or not, the Reich tubes had become part of Georgia's architectural identity, adding a distinct exotic character to Tbilisi's skyline that many say should not simply be bulldozed away. For now, tourists are rushing to photograph the structure before it disappears for good. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
And this concludes our news update for the hour. Thank you for your time and stay tuned to A News for more updates.